Hi everybody. The story that I'm about to tell you is such a strange and rare story, but it happened to my life in a period of intense world wars, and I had to suffer one of its consequences. My name is Saman, and the story happened when I was 30. I was born in Iran, a country rich in minerals. But because the political situation is not stable, it is always in a state of poverty and chaos. When I was 25, I went to America to work as a factory worker. After 5 years of living there, my friends in Iran and I had saved some money to bring it home and support our families. That was also the time when our work permit expired. We even got enough money to buy a ticket to go back to Iran. And we had some money to start a new life. But something happened that shattered our dream. The ticket was not cheap. They didn't have many flights from America to Iran. That's why we were struggling to buy tickets. But that time, even after a long while of looking for a ticket, I still couldn't buy one. One day, Dariush, a member of our group, told me that a representative from the flight ticket service had come to help us. He said flights back to my country were restricted and had run out of tickets. If we decided to come home, he'd help me and my friends swap the tickets with some passengers who wanted to cancel the flight. We were so excited because we could finally be able to come home after so many attempts. However, the ticket was not cheap. It costed almost half the money that I was planning to bring home with me. And the tickets to my mates were the same too. But I just wanted to come back to my wife and children, and we could only stay there for another week due to expired visas, so my friends and I agreed to pay for costly tickets. I knew everyone was upset that they had to spend a lot of money on tickets to get home. I was the oldest in our group, and I was also the most reliable, so people voted for me to be the group leader. All transactions were usually handled by me, and the same was done for his ticket purchase. The representative sent me a code via message and instructed us to look for the airport security door, tell the staff about his ticket office, and then give them this code number. The day had come, so 3 other friends and I went to the airport and checked in as he said. But nobody there knew about that ticket office, and nobody acknowledged his strange code. At that moment, the airport announcement broadcasted a message that shocked us all. Our country was officially at war, and all flights from America to Iran had been suspended. The unstable political situation in our country was the reason why I could not find an official ticket to return home. People no longer sold tickets, nor operated any more flights there. I panically called the ticket office with a little hope that they could help us, but nobody picked up. I ran everywhere, trying to inquire about this ticket office, but I was laughed at like a fool. It turned out the office was just a con, and that guy was a scammer. Losing money and not being able to come home, all of us wept out of self-pityness and pain for our motherland. Our visas expired, our country was at war, so our passports were also invalid. I could not extend to stay in the US, nor could I return home. We were stranded at the airport, hopelessly waiting for the day to come back. At first, we spent our money on 3 meals a day at the airport fast food restaurant and slept on the couch. But soon after, food became more expensive. The weather got colder, and we were running out of money, so we decided to just have 1 meal a day. We purchased less food and shared it with each other. The cold along with the hunger weakened us. But we waited at the airport every day and hoped to find more news about Iran. No matter what happened, we had to come home at all costs. Our situation became known by many people, but they couldn't help. Of course, they could neither stop the war nor send us a private plane. About a month later, an airport security officer named Matthew told me that he could help us find a ticket for a transit flight through our country, but they only stopped there in 10 minutes. We would have to quickly disembark the plane to return home. Based on Matthew's words, my 3 friends and I would have to secretly stay in the aircrew members' room on this flight. Matthew promised to ask his colleagues to help us out. It was our illumination of hope in this sorrow and despair. We were delighted that Matthew helped us out. However, we would also face some risks. If we got caught, the consequences would be terrible, but at the same time, we only thought that as long as we got home, we could start all over again. Matthew sent me a document and told me to meet the flight manager that day. He'd take us to the plane. We were waiting for a day. All of us had to leave through the back door and whispered to the manager about our conversation with Matthew. Matthew had indeed spoken with the manager before that. He nodded and took us down to a secret lane. It seemed to be exclusive for the crew. We had finally gotten on the plane. Something we could only dream about had come true. Here, A different staff member brought us to a dark room, but it didn't seem like a room for crew members. It was quiet, and there were some computers. Maybe it was the engine room, but we didn't have any other option anyway. The manager asked us to remain silent and invisible until the flight had landed. Someone would let us know when we arrived in Iran. Everything seemed to be fine, but when the plane had flown for an hour, a person from our group, Ramin, couldn't bear the low level of oxygen. That room wasn't designed for people to stay, so there wasn't a decent air system. Ramin wasn't able to breathe and soon fainted. Everyone began to panic because he was the sickest and weakest of the group, especially after our hard times at the airport. Even though I knew it wasn't allowed, my friend was in danger. We had no choice but to knock on the door and ask for help to save Ramin. Our presence in the engine room caused the crews to be in chaos and soon was notified to the supervisor. The manager, Matthew, and others who were involved in helping our group were fired for low security protection. That made me feel very sad and sorry for them. They had lost their job because of us. How awful it was. About our group, after we begged them not to arrest us, they decided to take us back to the airport where we started. Yes, we had to come back to America's airport, and we were still stuck there for days. Dark days were continued. Days after that, I was consumed by remorse, sorrow, and despair. I couldn't speak with either Matthew or the manager to say thank you or sorry to them. When I reached my limit, I looked for a secluded corner and cried. I felt so worthless and horrible for those who helped me, for my friends and my family, who were waiting for me at home. That night, a woman wearing an airport uniform came to me with tears. She was in agony. I thought, and I assumed she came here to cry like me. Her name was Ellie, a woman who was abused by her husband. She couldn't bring him to court because she was sorry for her children, and he was also the breadwinner of the family. Not only that, he was of high social position, so she couldn't do anything but to endure it. Even though we were strangers, we felt sympathy for each other and chatted through the night. After being scammed for tickets and remaining at the airport for days, our group didn't have any money left. I began searching for leftovers from fast food restaurants. We were struggling and starving for 3 days straight, and everyone was bony. At that time, we learned that the war situation in my hometown had calmed down. There were flights back home, but we didn't have any money left to buy tickets. We were exhausted from starvation. But, miraculously, Ellie, the woman who showed up the other night, reappeared and gave us some food. She also introduced us to a temporary job in the airport building area. She was like an angel who saved us from the dark days. We started to work and save money. We put all our might to work for 2 months. Even asked to work night shifts and vowed to finish the construction earlier than the deadline, so we could have more money to buy tickets to get home as soon as possible. And after 2 months, the day had come. But it seemed like Lady Luck hadn't smiled upon us yet. In order to be permitted to fly aboard, we must have the seal of the top manager of the airport. When I came to the office to ask for it, I was denied by the guy. It turned out he was Ellie's husband, the man that kind woman who helped us out at the airport talked about. He saw Ellie and I talking together that night, and he knew she was helping our group, so he was jealous and didn't want to sign the register. I left the room in desperation. Then Ellie came to us again. Somehow she knew that her abusive husband was causing us trouble. She swore to help us by putting pressure on him to sign our papers. But it also meant that she was at risk of facing a divorce. At the time, the inspection party was coming to the airport to carry out routine checkups. If I could have a conversation with them, they could consider signing the papers for us. While I felt guilty for Ellie, she was willing to leave her evil husband and support us. When the inspection group had arrived, Ellie had already spoken to them in advance about our situation. After having considered it, they found we were eligible to sign a due process review. The manager had no choice but to sign us our legal papers. After having accepted the documents, we eagerly bought the ticket to return home. We came home with empty hands, but I didn't care about that anymore. My wife and I would open our business in Iran. No matter how difficult our life is going to be, I'll always appreciate the time I can spend with my family. Now, looking back to that memory, what I want most is a chance to meet my saviors. I want to thank Ellie, Matthew, the manager, and the strangers who helped all of us in America. They have restored my faith in humanity.